Welcome back to Pink Slip Pavilion. We are back this week with a Pink Slip to Power Move story for you. And if this is your first time here, make sure you hit that follow or subscribe button so you never miss a layoff story. Here we believe that layoffs are just the beginning of your next chapter, and they can be a blessing in disguise if you're willing to grow through it. So if that sounds like you, we're here to prove it to you with stories every single week. And if we don't have a story, we have something tactical for you. So hit subscribe, hit follow. And without further ado, this week we have Christopher McFadden with his story from hospitality leader to hospitality career coach. Slips the stars, not the end. Welcome to Pink Slip Pavilion, Christopher. We're so excited to have you in the pavilion with us today.
Thank you very much, Ashley. Thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. So we have to start with the most important question. Have you ever gotten a pink slip?
I have. I have.
Okay, tell us more. Set the stage. What was going on in life? What was going on at work?
So about this time in 2023, I applied for a college role to see if I could get an interview to be a professor. And 3 weeks gone by, interview done, second interview done, and I left the campus with a faculty position as a professor in the School of Hospitality and Tourism with Fanshawe College, just in their Toronto campus here, which was one of their international campuses, in a private-public partnership that existed. And I was off to the races. I already had my own company going, which was just beginning. And I thought, well, my wife and I had moved to Burlington, Ontario from Western Canada. Burlington's where I'm originally from. And we moved here for family health reasons that needed attention. And we knew whatever we were doing professionally when we got here, it had to allow the opportunity for a pause to exist as family attention needed to be had. And I thought maybe the world of teaching would allow for that, as I came from 25 years of running restaurants and hotels for 15 hours a day. And it was
no holidays, nothing.
it just fit it, and it worked exactly beautifully. And everything was happening in Ontario incredibly well, where hospitality and tourism programs in colleges and universities are quite esteemed. And there's 16,000 international students that have spots here in schools for this, and these new private-public partnerships had opened up. So there were about 190 of us on faculty when the school kind of got off to its second semester, which I had joined then. And it was great. It was fantastic. I was teaching on campus or online 19 hours a week, and plus time to create the course plans and lesson plans and so on. And assignments and exams and what you will. It was amazing, absolutely amazing. And I had the McFadden group going at the same time, and everything was perfectly put together. And definitely the professor income was a solid thing to have in my pocket for more of a consistent income level coming in. And it was about February of 2024 where our government had made a huge decision and made the decision to cut down on immigration, and they started with students. And then they slowly tiered it into what was going to become depletion of campuses, depletion of programs. So there was a bunch of us that knew. I was teaching an undergrad food and beverage operations class, and as we took lunch break, one of my colleagues goes, "Did you hear the news?" And I said, "What?" And he goes, "This is all going to go." And I was like, what? That doesn't make any sense. And sure enough, slowly but surely, so May of 2024, we got our last students coming in. So there was about 6,000 students that came in between undergrad and postgrad students. And we all knew that slowly but surely we'd all be losing our position on campus. And it was funny because you only look at your own little bubble that you're in. I was on faculty at another college as well. And slowly roles started to dilute. And I was lucky. I was holding on by a string of a thread, and you just waited to find out if it was your time and when that time was coming. And April of 2025, I knew that that was going to be the end of my time, finishing up winter semester, but I knew beginning March. And it was interesting because our program director, you either got an email that said, this is what your next school schedule looks like, or you got that email that said, we'd love to talk to you about next semester. And I got that email. And I sent that email to a bunch of colleagues that I knew they had gotten theirs the semester before. And I said, is this that email? And they said, it is. So when we got on the phone, I knew it. But there was obviously delayed response on my emails out to the team to say, I'm guessing that this is what it is. And I'd like to plan maybe a week extra ahead. So yeah, I got my pink slip of April of last year. And it was a hard one because this was a great thing that I loved being in education directly. The opportunity to be a professor was absolutely incredible. So losing that one was a bit of a hit.
It's tough when you really love where you are and then you get uprooted. It's one thing when you don't necessarily love your job, and so it's still hard, but it's a different kind of hard. But when
Okay.
you love it and then all of a sudden you're uprooted, that's tough. So what was your mindset? Obviously, there was a long ramp up of it might be coming, but what was your mindset in the moment when you got your pink slip?
I think I mentally prepared for it, and I think I was very much. Not everybody is as lucky to know that it's coming. Um, but this was a hard one because you sit and wait, and then you really start questioning why, like why is this my time? And I had a lot of things going on in my wife and I's personal life for starting a family and or hoping to start a family, and yeah, it was one of those things that I thought I would have hung on till the end. And then I realized that everybody else did too, and that our time comes when it's supposed to come. But it was a hard one. It's a big reality when all of a sudden you have to accept it because there's no way around it. Um, because all of our campuses were closed, private public partnerships were dismissed. There had to have been, I would say, between admin staff and teaching staff in this province, easily 3 to 4 thousand people that have lost their roles.
Wow.
And it's still happening in education because international students have been depleted, and that's a huge income for schools to take in anywhere in North America, especially. But for me, it was a hard one. I loved it, and I had to really accept that it wasn't happening. And yeah, so it took a solid week of settling into the idea of, okay, well, I got to drive harder in what else I do, because it's a big gap, and incomes are lost quite quickly.
Absolutely. So how did your mindset evolve as you grew through it? Because I know you had your own business as well, but how did your mindset evolve to get through it and going from feeling, disappointed and feeling like this is out of my control to where you are today? What did that evolution of mindset look like?
It was interesting because when I had first launched my company, I was doing more one-to-one coaching and a leadership hierarchy idea and executive side of things. And I had 9 students that were all postgrads that had no idea what to do next. That they had one of them specifically was kind of enrolled by her colleagues to go talk to Christopher. He seemed like he can help us, and maybe you take the lead on this one. And Grishma was amazing, like beyond bubbly human being, filled with life, energy, just enthusiasm about great things in life. And she goes, I'm stuck. I don't know what to do. Like, on top of the fact that all of us hospitality students are now going to go into an industry where all of our professors can go back into that industry because they're losing their roles. So I had these 9 students that were lost, and they were the reason why I had pivoted what I was doing with executives and realizing that there was a whole world out there of people that needed help in their next steps. But I realized that I had done that for myself as I had gone through the transition of leaving a full restaurant career, and doing very well at it. 25 years of senior roles, and that shift into this new lifestyle based upon a reason why we moved to Ontario. Um, all of the dots were connecting, and then all of a sudden I realized that other people were struggling too with. We just spent a lot of money on our education. We just moved across the world. Now what do we do? And I realized that everything I had gone through, I was now watching other people go through, and allowed my company to transition in the betterness of people taking their next steps, because I realized I had to start taking mine almost the exact same time, but just be a little bit further ahead because I had my livelihood and my family's livelihood to make sure was still in order.
Well, and it sounds like you had a little bit of an advantage too because of what you do, right? Your mindset, you had a whole toolkit of how am I going to grow through this,
I did.
which not necessarily everybody has when they go through this, but I love that you took that and you found the need and went, I'm going to help guide people through this instead of just staying in the lane that you were in and saying, okay, I'm going to continue with executives. You open that door to I see people in need. I have this skill set. I've walked this walk. I'm currently walking this walk, but I have this toolkit that I can use. How can I bring people with me through this
It's
experience?
interesting when you realize that you're not the only one.
Yeah,
And
it's
when you
powerful.
start going, okay, well, there's got to be others. Like it can't just be me. And
Hmm.
it was when I realized that everything I had done for myself in my expansion of becoming stronger and wiser and just in more power internally with I'm going to go after stuff in a different way. Because just falling backwards, that was the biggest thing is that I knew it was happening. But then when it happened, it was so disappointing
Yeah.
because of loving what I did. I have lots of old school friends from when I was in elementary school. Burlington, Ontario is a very cookie cutter city, and it's a beautiful city. But all of my elementary school friends still live here. And they went to elementary school, high school, university, met somebody, got a job, got a career role, had kids, bought a house. But I've got friends that I haven't seen since I was in grade four that I've reconnected with that just got laid off after 20 years of being with major corporations. And they go, what do I do?
Yeah.
And I was lucky. I lived in Western Canada for about 20 years, but I was in Ontario and then BC and then Ontario and then Alberta. And then I bounced a bit until I found my happiness in Western Canada. And then priorities shifted where I knew I had to be back in Ontario and my wife's from the East Coast. So it's easier for her to get there and all those little things, right? But we made big life decisions that were going to change how we professionally did it. So when that lined up perfectly in the role that I had, and I'd still be doing it today if that depletion didn't exist. But it was the my eyes opening to realize that I wasn't the only one in the room that was going through this, and it was a big one to even self-absorb that there was more of us out there. But taking it personally was something I couldn't do, is that I realized it was something that was out of my control, and that I had to make some different pivoting points to make sure that my feet were still standing on the ground.
So with that, looking back now, what blessings do you think you would have missed out on had that not happened? Because you said you would still be there today. So had that not happened, what blessings would you have missed out on in your life?
Oh, I'll share. I gotta share it very delicately just because of the process that we're in. But my wife and I weren't able to start a family on our own and through IVF. And we knew that there had to be a kid on this earth that needed a better tomorrow. So we knew that adoption was the process that we were going to be taking. But it was a heavy one to realize that you couldn't have one of your own. And but we knew that adoption was a pathway that we were going to go after. But there's never a guaranteed end to that actually becoming a thing. And just as April came around last year, when it didn't have me carrying on in education, which would have, taken me into Toronto 4 days a week, which isn't far from where I am, but an hour trek back and forth. And then in June of last year, my wife and I got matched for adoption. So in July, all of a sudden, 5 nights a week, we were having to drive an hour and a half down the road, if you will, to start building a relationship with our son and start building a relationship with a human being. He was 4.5 at the time when we met him. And yeah, that would have existed still, but not in the same light because I wouldn't have been able to. I knew I would have had to take time off. And I was blessed because the school had already pre approved me before any of this you know, job loss was deemed to happen, where I was already approved to take, paternity leave, which was great. So I had everything lined up for that to work out. However, it completely changed when I realized that the only thing that mattered right now was that opportunity to getting to know this young man that was on his way to becoming our son. So that was such a big piece of everything that we've hoped for that we got. And my schedule opened up completely for that to happen without any, it wouldn't have not happened, but without any distraction, which was great. So that was,
Feel like Do
yeah,
you
that
feel
was a big,
like the stress of when is my time coming might have been a factor in that whole experience? Because
a
you're
hundred
getting to
percent.
know your son and there's a lot going into that and that's a huge experience in itself. Do you think this having the stress of when is my time potentially coming would have been a hindrance to that blessing?
Oh, 100%. Because now it's like, oh, now there's three of us to feed. Okay.
Pressure.
So, all right. So what are we going to do? How are we going to work this part of our life out, right? What does, using savings look like? And it doesn't really matter. Doesn't matter. Is that everything we've ever wanted became possible. And that everything that was happening on the back end of things was allowing for this to happen in a more seamless way, which I think is absolutely the blessing in this.
Yeah.
Still would have happened, but however, just this was the gratitude that existed because of that being a part of it. But I'll tell you, the nerves and the kind of gasps of air that you go after, going, what's about to happen? And it was the most beautiful thing in the world to happen. But it was that realization that I knew that life work balance made more sense than this mentality of work life balance. So that if you're not starting the day for something personally to then do something professionally, then it doesn't work. And I advocate for this completely. Is that the work life balance thing and people going, it's just mockery. Well, it is, right? Because I think people are getting it wrong. Is that if you're not starting your day for everything personal, to be able to better you in what you do professionally, then it doesn't make sense. And I think that's a huge reason why my tagline is building people, not positions, because I think we can do happier and more successful things in our career when we're happier, more successful in who we are to start our day. And I'll tell you that was the blessing. But if I could have this with our son and being a professor still, it'd be fantastic. In just a different way, right? But now it's allowed my own company to grow and build, but it changes how you push forward because when one thing sets you back, it just doesn't make any sense to continue to sit in that spot. It's like you got to work harder and smarter and wiser, and just driven perseverance to going after not purpose as being a destination for yourself as an end result, but the purposefulness of how you carry yourself through a day. Um, yeah, challenging for sure. And I never thought that would be a place where a career would end. Was that who would touch education? Like that doesn't make any sense. And I'm not a big political guy, but I'll tell you, I got my feathers ruffled for sure at a political party that made these decisions that have affected a lot of people. And I'm watching a lot of colleagues and friends that are still going through this. What do I do?
Yeah.
And the struggle exists.
And it's out of your control, which always, that is one of the hardest things about life. So, with the wisdom that you have now, looking back, if you could talk to yourself back then when you're getting your pink slip, you got that email, what would you want to say to him?
It's okay. It's okay. Right? Is that there's challenges that come in life and we have to take them on. Um, I think I would have I love the idea between emotions and thoughts. And I've studied emotional intelligence for years and I'm educated in the space for it. Is that I'm studying psychology at university now in my mid 40s. And it's interesting where I asked my professor last year, I said, so what sits between your thoughts and your emotions? And it's that gut moment that you have where doubt exists and just struggle and overthinking starts to become emotionally driven. And I think I was able to coach myself into a positive mindset, but worry existed, obviously. Um, I think I could have pushed myself a little bit more forward without creating not necessarily fear, but worry of just what are we going to do? Like this was something new and nothing that ever existed before. And I think that was the hardest part to it was that I haven't had this before. And now that I found something new and flashy, right, is that why is something gone that was so good? But if I was to, I would, I think I would understand more that the challenge is not something that's not possible just to take on and go harder and faster at overcoming. Um, and I think if I stuck with that mindset more so, then worry would have disappeared a little bit quicker.
Huge. So if
Yeah.
there's somebody listening to this right now who's going through a layoff or is fearful that maybe one's coming, what, or actually, or still maybe processing a layoff from the past too, because that's a big part of just moving through and moving on. What would you want them to hear and take away from this conversation?
Don't take it personally. I think that's it. It's not pointed at you. It's pointed at a situation that exists. Um, I'm watching this with teachers here. I'm watching this with healthcare here. I've got two nurses as clients that every morning when they wake up, they're worried that today's the day.
Mm,
Like two EAs at my son's school that were both like, I can't stand my job. And it's like, that's a problem. Like, that's a mindset because we know what's happening in September and there's no more funding that's going into it. So there's lots of things that are happening and just honestly in a public system that exists that is, again, this isn't a political conversation, but that's government funding. But it's hard when you drop your 5-year-old off at school and there's two EAs that are like, ugh. And I was like, that's not good. Like the mindset can be fixed, right? Is that there's new things that you go after. And if you start realizing that this might happen, right, is that start preparing yourself for it to potentially happen. Not guaranteeingly happen, but at least you got to start preparing yourself to be able to walk out of it happening with something new on the horizon for you that you started to go after. And I think people have to start really pushing forward with the next new if if that worry sits in the back of their mind. But
very powerful.
don't take it personally. Right?
Yeah.
It's that whole it's not personal, it's business, a famous quote, right? But industries are shrinking and there's a problem in a lot of the economy and jobs are being lost and people are scared. And especially in a city that I live in that's very suburban. It's, most people that work in Toronto or most people that live in Burlington work in Toronto and it's a quick transit ride downtown to Toronto and you can just tell, right? You can feel the energy in the area when people aren't going to work normally. And it's like, what's happened?
Mm,
Um, but I think the more we take it personally, the harder it gets.
yeah.
And the more that we take advantage of what we can do personally for ourselves to overcome what may be sitting in the future, that's going to be a hit, the better outcomes arrive.
Great advice. It's always good to prepare for tomorrow, even if tomorrow never comes, right? Especially our
Yeah,
mindset. And I think it's easier sometimes to face challenges when you've kind of already gone through it in your head. Like, if this happens, this is my backup plan, or this is what I'm thinking I'll pivot to next. So I think that is great advice. And thank you so
cheers. Thank you.
much for
Yeah,
joining me in
thank
the
you.
pavilion. I hope that we'll see you again soon. But thank you for being vulnerable and being willing to share your story. I know it will impact other people.
I believe transparency is everything, and I, I'm an open book, and I believe it just helps people just find more honesty in themselves when they hear somebody else that just puts the cards on the table. But believe in yourself and go after what you want, and everything's possible. I assure you of that. But there'll be struggles from time to time. That's what the world has given us, and it's life, right? But you can supersede it very easily when you just put your head straight and go after what you want.
Thank you so much, Christopher.
Ashley, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Well, there you have it. More proof of just how powerful your mind is. And if you've been listening to these stories, this comes up over and over again. But I want you to take away from this particular story that you can start preparing at any point. So if you're fearful that a layoff may be coming for you, if you're fearful that your industry is shrinking and jobs are going away in your industry, start thinking now, What do you want next? What skill sets do you need to develop to get to that next space that you want to be in? What do you even want to do with your life? You can ask those questions at any point, and I encourage you to do so. If you want to connect with Christopher, his contact information will be in the description of this episode. And of course, we'll be back next Wednesday and every Wednesday with more stories. And if we don't have a story, I already told you, we'll have something tactical for you on your layoff journey. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss out. And I hope that you are leaving this conversation with lots of hope for what's next for you. And I'll see you next week. This pink slips the